Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming.
It's not too late. Oh, yes.
So I just want to make one quick announcement before we get started. Let's everybody calm down for a second. Tomorrow, Secretary Locke will be giving a speech on a new major export initiative. The President laid out a goal for increasing exports, doubling exports in 5 years, and this initiative will lay out the path to get there. He has spoken to the winners in the Illinois primary. And with that, Julie, I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. The President said this morning that he would be open to compromise on health care. What are the areas specifically that he'd be willing to compromise on?
Well, as the President has said before, he has very specific principles that he's laid out. He feels like we've gone a very far way in both the House and in the Senate. We've made more progress than any administration in history when it comes to health care. But he's not a legislative technician. He's not going to get into the nitty-gritty of what the best way forward is at this point. He's hoping that legislators on Capitol Hill will work to iron out their differences.
But even he said that he wasn't specific enough in the initial negotiations on health care. So will he be getting more specific?
Well, the President, as you know, has been very active in these negotiations in the sense that he's making sure that folks in the Senate, folks in the House, have a clear sense of where the President wants to go. But in terms of actually writing the legislation and getting down to the line by line of what the best way to reach the final agreement is, he doesn't consider that to be his role.
And then on AIG, last year when the bonuses were handed out, Secretary Geithner said that he wasn't aware at that point of the extent of them, but going forward there would be more flexibility in negotiating these bonuses. Was he aware, and was the administration aware of these bonuses that were just handed out, and was there any negotiations that went on into the amounts and the extent of them?
Well, the news about these bonuses is not new. What is new is that AIG got some of their employees to voluntarily give back $20 million of those bonuses. Obviously, the President is frustrated and angry that Wall Street continues to have this sense that excessive compensation should reward some of the excessive risk-taking that we've seen over the course of the last couple of years of Wall Street, things that brought us to the brink. That's why he hasn't stopped fighting to make sure that we get the reforms in place in order to get these packages under control, things like Say on Pay, ways that we can do this through financial regulatory reform. He's also been serious about making sure that we get taxpayer money back, which is why he instituted the bank fee, to make sure that every single dime that went out from taxpayers comes back to the federal government.
But is there frustration, though, that no matter what he says and no matter what he seems to do at this point, these bonuses are still getting handed out?
Well, like I said before, the news about these isn't new, but what is new is that some of that money is not going out. But is he frustrated and angry about the fact that the bonus structure remains the same that it has been? Absolutely. So the President's going to work on those items that I mentioned. Matt?
A couple of questions, one economic, the other foreign. Moody's, the big bond rating agency, has issued a report saying that growing U.S. deficits threaten the country's AAA bond rating, that the President's budget plan is just a small step in the right direction. Now, is the administration taking that assessment seriously of a possible downgrade in the country's bond rating? And what, if anything, would the President do to, beyond what he's already announced, to try to address that situation?
Well, the President didn't need Moody's to tell him that we have a long-term fiscal problem in this country. That's why his budget lays out ways in which we can cut the deficit in the mid to long term, but in the short term take care of some of the problems that we've got in this economic crisis, putting Americans back to work, helping banks get more loans out to small businesses so they can create more jobs and things like that. So the President is very concerned about the fiscal state of this country, and he's going to continue to work to make sure that we're taking on the deficit.
But the Moody's specifically says the President's plan does not do enough at this time to address that problem. Is the President going to basically ignore that?
Well, the President doesn't necessarily disagree that the plan doesn't do enough. That's why he thinks that we need a fiscal commission in place to help get bipartisan support for some of the elements that we need to put in place to bring down the deficit in the long term. We've gone a long way towards cutting spending, towards being responsible about how we're spending taxpayers' dollar, getting rid of duplicative programs or programs that don't work. But there's more that we need to do, and hopefully that fiscal commission will help to do just that.
Okay, and on Iran said today that it had fired a rocket capable of launching a satellite. What is the administration's level of concern about whether that technology, that capability could be devoted towards military use, even a nuclear missile program?
Obviously we've seen those reports, and we're still checking them out to make sure that they're accurate. A launch like that is obviously a provocative act, but the president believes that it's not too late for Iran to do the right thing, come to the table with the international community, and live up to its international obligations.
Well, Iranian President Ahmadinejad said yesterday that Iran was in fact ready to go ahead with the deal that it had reached earlier, but yet reneged on to allow its nuclear fuel to be processed abroad. Does the president see that as a serious offer or overture, and would the U.S. take advantage of that in some way, or do they see it as being a way of diverting attention or diverting efforts towards a new round of sanctions?
Well, some of these reports have been pretty fragmentary in the sense that we haven't seen a whole transcript and everything that he has said. But if those comments indicate some sort of change in position for Iran, then President Ahmadinejad should let the IAEA know. Ed?
Bill, two topics. First on Toyota, I wanted to ask you about the President's Transportation Secretary today on the Hill saying that people who have Toyotas should just stop driving them. He's since said that was a misstatement, but I wonder if you can clarify, what is the White House telling the millions of Toyota owners out there across the country to do?
Well, for starters, as you know, NHTSA, the Department of Transportation, has been very active in making sure that Americans are kept safe on our roads. They've been forward-leaning as it relates to Toyota, making sure that they're living up to safety standards, including encouraging them on the recall. As it relates to people who have Toyotas now, you should go to the experts at the Department of Transportation who know a little more about this issue, but all Americans should really they should get their cars checked out. If they think that they might have,
stop driving Toyotas?
If they think that they might have a car that's a part of the recall, then they should go get it checked out. And if it is, they should get it fixed. And if it's not, then they should keep on doing what they're doing.
But on the question of why did the Secretary say stop driving Toyotas, and is there any procedures in place here at the White House now that the government owns a large share of GM about having procedures in place for potential conflicts of interest in terms of commenting on other cars and dealing with these safety recalls could be a sticky issue?
For starters, the Secretary made clear what he thinks is the right thing to do, which is what I just said. As for being involved in other car companies, this is obviously something the President never wanted to get involved in, but it, of course, would not have any impact on this administration's commitment to making sure that Americans are kept safe on our roads.
I asked you about last night's, the information that came out from the White House about Abdul Muttalib and the interrogations he's had and what cooperation he has with the government. There was a hearing on the Hill today where various Republicans, including Mac Thornberry, were saying that this was just about political cover and that the White House was trying to leak this information selectively in order to protect the president because he has a political problem right now.
Well, I would just say that before there was criticism from Republicans that what we were doing wasn't working. Now that people find out that what we're doing is working, they're criticizing the fact that we're saying that what's working is working. Look, nothing came out last night that compromises any of the investigations or any of the interrogations that are currently ongoing. We feel like we pursued the correct course in interrogating Abdul Muttalib, and through that course we've gotten quite a bit of information that's been helpful both to the United States and some of our foreign partners in keeping the American people safe. So there's no regrets on that. But I will say that it's Washington, and there's a lot of politics that gets played. And I was just watching an interview that was on cable news before I came out here, and you've got folks who are. I never said that I don't watch cable news. In fact, it's part of my job, frankly. I watch the broadcast too, but you've got people who are criticizing things that we're doing in this administration that never criticize things that happened in the administration prior that are exactly the same, and without anything changing in the interim, the only thing that I can surmise is maybe that there are some politics at play.
But it doesn't seem like you're not denying that part of the motive here was to push back on the president's political critics. And I wonder if by revealing that some of Abdul Muttalib's family members are cooperating with the U.S. government, that could now put their lives in danger because Al-Qaeda and others are going to say these family members are helping the U.S. government.
Well, for starters, I will say that the reason that people were told about the success of these interviews didn't have anything to do with politics, in the sense that the determination was made here at the White House that it was important for the American people to know that we're doing everything possible to keep the American people safe, and that these interrogations